So the Shiny's new Horus Heresy Kratos tank has got some Warhammer 40K rules. Let's take a look over its datasheet and how strong it is for the Space Marine army. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're doing a Space Marine datasheet review for the new Kratos tank, one of the releases that's more aimed at the Horus Heresy, so it's a more old school style tracked vehicle as opposed to one of the new Primaris hover creations, but I think quite a lot of people do quite like that aesthetic for the Space Marines. Today Games Workshop's just published a digital 40k datasheet, so I thought it would be fun to take a look over it, see how powerful it is, look at maybe a potential build or two that you could do for the tank, as it does have a lot of options, and maybe run some numbers against one of the other tanks within the Space Marine Codex to see whether or not this one can compete with the best that they have to offer. First up, just for the release itself, the Kratos tank has gone up for pre-order on Games Workshop. It's £75, $125 or €100, a fairly big beefy boy. It is basically a heavy tank, a lot bigger than most Space Marine vehicles that you can field, but a little bit bigger than the super heavies like say the Fellblade or the Guard Baneblade. If you did want to pick it up in the UK, it is on pre-order at £60 from Element Games, so that's a fairly decent saving on quite a big kit. I'll leave a link to that down in the video description, and purchases made through that do help support the channel without costing you any more. If you're thinking about picking one up, it isn't the worst way to get hold of one. As you can see pictured here, the tank's got a fairly solid amount of options. It's got the main battle cannon, which we'll see in a second is strength 7 damage 3, and then an enormous bulk height and a big melter weapon if you want those instead. Plus it's really got quite a vast array of sponson options, the actual sponsons themselves, and then the hull mounted guns on either side. Plus if you want you can mount a massive great big dozer ram thing. It doesn't have any in-game effect in 40k, but it does look pretty cool. The datasheet that Games Workshop have released today is a downloadable one on the Warhammer community website. It can be fielded for any Imperial chapter, though for some reason at this point they have chosen to only release an Imperium datasheet for the thing. There isn't as of yet a Chaos one. I don't know yet whether this is a classic Games Workshop move of just forgetting that the heretics exist, but to be honest I can see why they might delay on releasing the Chaos datasheet as the Codex is just round the corner. If they released a digital datasheet for the Chaos forces, then it probably would have to be updated anyway to fit in with the new Codex with all the rules changes and different special rules, so I would hope that they'll get round to releasing one in the not too distant future. In any case, let's get into the datasheet itself. The Kratos tank is a heavy support choice for 320 points, so fortunately it's not going to be made even more niche by cramming it into the Lord of War slot and all the disadvantages that being Titanic brings. Most of the weapon options cost the exact same, so it does mean that you're not going to be fiddling around too much with different points costs, though I think it does mean that plenty of the guns are pretty much directly superior to other ones. Some of the options just really aren't worth taking when you can upgrade to a better gun for free. The only things that cost points for it are the multi-melter upgrade on the top hatch, and if you choose to pick up a hunter-killer missile for the standard plus 5 points, and it does also come with that martial legacy rule to represent the scarcity of these things in current 40k, it'll cost 1 command point extra. Basically it's a dedicated gun platform for around 320 points, so that means it's going to be directly compared to things like the Repulsor Executioner. I guess that's not the hardest comparison to beat at the moment, as that's one of the weaker tanks in the Space Marine arsenal. Stat line wise, this thing is pretty beefy: 10-inch movement, weapon skill 6+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 8 and toughness 8, 18 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9 and a 2+ save. In general for the points cost I don't think it's too bad durability wise. Toughness 8 and a 2+ armor is really nice with Armor of Contempt, and 18 wounds does mean that you're going to have to chew through quite a lot. Just with the armor and the extra wounds alone, it makes it massively more durable than the Repulsor Executioner, which costs a slight bit higher, but the 2+ with Armor of Contempt is really good against AP-3 anti-tank weapons. Otherwise, keywords wise, there aren't really many surprises. It's not core, though it does have smoke screen, so you can get it to be -1 to hit for 1 CP. Perhaps the exciting bit though are the guns. The main weapon is a battle cannon that's 36 inches, and you can choose between 2 different loadouts. I'd say that by far the better one is the high explosive shell with D6+3 shots at strength 7, AP-2, damage 3. Usually going to be 6 or 7 shots on average there. A decent bit of AP and damage 3 isn't too bad with the 3 wound infantry that run around quite a lot these days, things like Terminators or Custodians perhaps. Otherwise you can swap it out for a single shot at strength 14, AP-5 and damage D3+6. I can't say I find this one all that exciting to be honest. Even against fairly optimal targets, it doesn't outcompete the high explosive shells by all that much. Really, this thing isn't going to be all that great against armor if you point it at it. Perhaps the best looking gun initially is the Melter Blast gun, 36 inches at heavy 4, strength 8, AP 4 and damage D6, and it also gets the extra +2 to its damage characteristic if you get within 18 inches. That would make it significantly more scary. Even outside melter range, you average something like 6 wounds on a toughness 7 vehicle just with that gun alone, and that's not too bad. Finally, there's the Volkite Cardinal, the more anti-infantry option, 45-inch range and heavy 8, strength 7 AP-1 and damage 2, and it has the Volkite rule where 6s to wound cause 2 mortal wounds in addition to normal damage. Definitely a few trade-offs between that and the battle cannon there. I feel like they're quite well balanced. The Volkite does get more shots than the mortal wounds, but the extra AP and damage really is a big advantage for the battle cannon. I feel like the numbers of those two are going to come out fairly equally. Then we get to all the other guns that it has. It's got a coaxial autocannon that just functions like a normal one. 4 sets of heavy bolters, 2 on the sponsons and then 2 on the hull, and you can swap them out a little bit weirdly. Any of them can be replaced by a las cannon for free, which I think I'd usually take over the heavy bolters myself, and then the sponson ones can either take Volkite culverins or heavy flamers. The Volkite culverins I think are another interesting option, mortal wounds and lots of mass attacks. And then the hull-mounted ones can either be las cannons, autocannons, or Volkite calivers if you do want to swap out the heavy bolters. The Volkite calivers are significantly weaker than the culverins though, they only get half the shots, so I wouldn't bother swapping out for Volkite there. Finally, you get a top hatch weapon included for free. You can either take a combi weapon of your choice, including interestingly a Volkite one, but more likely, seeing as it doesn't cost more, you can either have another heavy bolter, a heavy flamer, or a havoc launcher. I think the Havoc launcher is quite an interesting choice with a little bit of Ignore's line of sight there. It's D6 shots at strength 5 AP0, so it's not likely to change the world, but having a tiny bit of Ignore's line of sight could be handy from time to time to finish off weak enemy units. Otherwise though, for 10 points you can upgrade to a multi-melter, so an extra couple of high quality anti-tank shots coming out of it if you really want to specialise. Finally, to cap it off, you can take a kind of take or leave hunter-killer missile, just 5 points extra. I think these typically just fall into the merely okay category, and not really the biggest deal either way. Overall though, it's a pretty tough tank, packing a whole ton of guns, and it does seem that you can make this into quite a fearsome anti-tank beast if you want to, as we'll see in a second. So here's just one idea for one way that you could set up a Kratos tank. If you did want a big armor busting machine, then you could take the Melter Blast gun on top for those 4 big melter shots, 4 las cannons in the hull mounted options, maybe thinking about swapping out 2 of them for those Volkite culverins as an alternative, the multi-melter on the top hatch for an extra 10 points, and that autocannon to plink away as well. Melter range does improve the damage output of this quite a bit, but assuming you're outside it, then against a toughness 7 vehicle you're doing around 15 wounds on average, and against a pretty hard target, something like a Plague Burst Crawler, something with toughness 8, a 5+ invul and -1 damage, it averages about 7.2 wounds. In general, I still feel this is going to be pretty underwhelming compared with core choices like say Eradicators or Attack Bikes, but certainly having this all lumped together in one solid mass could be annoying. This isn't going to go down with just trivial firepower, your opponent would have to dedicate something pretty meaningful to it, and it can be good in certain chapters like Iron Hands, as we'll get on to. I thought it could be fun to just run some numbers on one of the better Space Marine vehicles. Just on raw numbers, it pretty much beats out the Repulsor Executioner easily, so I thought it might be a bit more useful to compare it to a more efficient tank like say the Gladiator Valiant, which I think could fill a pretty similar role to this setup with a bunch of melter weapons and las cannon type shots. The Valiant costs 215 points, so it does 11 or 12 wounds to a toughness 7 target, so point for point it does slightly beat out the Kratos there, 5.3 wounds per 100 points versus the Kratos' 4.5, though I would bear in mind that the Kratos is longer range than the Gladiator Valiant, as all of its guns are 24 inches, where a fair few of the Kratos' guns will be able to fire significantly further away. For the points though, the Kratos is fairly significantly tougher than the Gladiator. Say if we had las cannons pointed at them, then you'd need 15 las cannon hits to bring down a Kratos, but only 7 or 8 to kill the Gladiator. It makes the Kratos on average about 25% more durable. Overall, for the raw numbers, I'd say they're fairly equivalent. The Gladiator is shorter ranged but hits a bit harder, the Kratos is a bit more durable. Not too bad considering that the Gladiators are some of the more efficient Space Marine tanks, but I'm still not sure it's going to really rival the core sources of Space Marine firepower, things like say Eradicators or Redemptor Dreadnoughts. I'd certainly rank them higher than the Space Marine non-core unit shooting. If you did want to run a Kratos though and get the most out of it, then it's a pretty decent choice for a Tech Marine to support. It's perhaps 330 points worth of unit, so getting the +1 to hit from the Tech Marine's innate buff is really handy for us. Having that much anti-tank firepower hitting on 2s is really nice. Plus you could repair a fair bunch of wounds per turn. Having a really tough defensive profile means that it's likely to get injured but not killed, so that healing might have chance to come into effect. If you want to make non-core vehicles work in Space Marines, then pretty much the flatly superior way to run them is with the Iron Hands chapter. They just have a lot of very decent support options for making 1 or 2 big pieces work well. The chapter tactic isn't a bad start, with a 6+ Feel No Pain for more durability, and slower degrading to mean that the Kratos will be hitting better for longer. But then combine that with a few useful things, like being able to access the Devastator Doctrine for 1 CP each turn. Rerolling 1s to hit an extra AP is very nice, particularly so on the Volkite weapons maybe. On top of that though, you could significantly amp it up with the psychic powers. The Steel Armor spell can give you +1 to your saves, which is amazing on a 2+ save vehicle with Armor of Contempt. You'd be saving AP -3 things like las cannons on a 3+, meaning that against a lot of armies you could just legitimately sit this thing in the open, laugh off damage, and blast a whole load of units off the board each turn. Otherwise the Librarian does maybe have a bit of overlap with the Tech Marine. You could also give it a +1 to hit, or repair it for wounds with other spells though. So overall for Space Marines, I'd say that the Kratos rules look usable, but maybe not one of the single strongest units in the book. I feel like it's a relatively good place for the datasheet, to be honest. If Space Marines became a bit more slanted to making their non-core vehicles work, then it'd probably do even better. In any case though, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Could you see yourself using one of these Volkite or Melter-toting relics and trundling it into battle alongside your Marines? And are there any other interesting features about the rules that I've missed that might come in handy? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, including news and reviews of Games Workshop's releases as they come out. It'll be interesting to see if they drop any other datasheets to represent heresy things in 40k. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel, I would just like to quickly mention that Element Games link once more. If you're looking to pick up a Kratos tank or just about anything else in Warhammer 40k, Element Games based in the UK can do things a bit cheaper, usually 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's miniatures, and if you order something after clicking the link in the video description, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever. Can just be a way to help out if you were going to pick up some Warhammer anyway. For people over in the USA, I do also have an Amazon link down there as well. That one works in much the same way. Click the link, order anything through Amazon, and a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more when you buy. A massive thank you to you guys who have been using those, and a big thank you for listening. I'll hope to see you guys next time.